I have chosen to analyze the film Seven. In my analyze, I will talk about which cinematic effects the director had used and how the movie get our attention. The first I'm gonna do is place the movie in the chart on the website horrorscreen.com. I would say the film is in the genre killer and in the subgenre crime and gallium. A subgenre often follows a certain pattern, and in this case crime and gallium is often about a couple of police officers or police detectives who is investigating a case of gruesome murder. This sounds just like a thriller, but the reason why it's not a thriller is because of the nasty and gruesome murders. And because there's 7 gruesome and nasty murders in the movie Seven, I would consider the movie in the subgenre crime and gallium. I would also say there's a bit of the subgenre madness and paranoia. The subgenre is the genre that feels the most real since it features the work of humans that have become crazy or in some very extreme situations. I would especially say in the end of Seven, there's a lot of the subgenre madness and paranoia, because John Doe created this kind of hell where the detective Mills, played as Brad Pitt, had to solve if he wanted to take revenge of the death of his wife, or if he can manage to control his feelings, which would be very hard if you consider the situation. But also because John Doe is mentally sick, and the reason why we can say he's mentally sick is because he says when he's driving with the 2 detectives in the car, I was chosen. But when Detective Somerset asks why he would get such an enjoyment out of it, he doesn't answer the question. Instead, he starts talking about what the Detective Mills would do with him if they were alone in a room without any windows. So he's not chosen. It is something he made up by himself. And this is why I will consider Seven also a little bit as the subgenre madness and paranoia. The movie was released in 1996. At that time, people was tired of seeing slasher, splatter, and monster films. In the 80s, those kind of film was very popular. Some of the famous film from that period was Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, and The Evil Dead. But when the 90s came around, the slasher cycle had pretty much run its course and was starting to fall into parody. People didn't find slasher and splatter movies interesting anymore. They wanted some realistic horror movies. And this is why thriller and psychological horror films became very successfully. And it is in this period The Silence of the Lambs, The Sixth Sense, and our movie was released, and they got a lot of success because they came in the right time. And psychological horror and thriller have remained popular throughout the 90s and 2000s. Now, I would like to talk about how the movie gets our attention. Because when we watch the movie, we are really concentrated and we doesn't care about our circumstances because the movie is so interesting and it really gets our attention. But which psychological instrument does the film use? One of the instruments the director have used to get the viewers and the audience attention is by foreshadowing how the next 5 murders take place. When Detective Somerset finds the reason why the murder are killing people, because of the 7 death sins, the viewer would like to know if the detectives find the murderer before he kills all 7 people and he's ending his work. But why do we want to know if the detectives find John Doe? It is because horror movies activate a lot of our brain. It activates the medial prefrontal cortex in our brain, the part of the brain associated with planning and attention, and especially in this movie, problem solving. The film also uses mystery to get our attention. We don't like to know why a man kills people who is, from our point of view, is innocent. So the director used the 7 death sins as a mystery. This is a way to get the viewer's attention. Another way the director get our attention is by social fear. DJ Scal posits that horror films are a reflection of our social fears. Looking at the history of horror, you have monsters in the 50s, our fear of nuclear, zombies in the 60s, and zombies again in the 2000s as a reflection of viral pandemic fears. But in this film, the societal fears is by a serial killer. We don't know who will be the next victim, but we know they're gonna be one. Just as we know there's gonna be a next terror action, but we doesn't know where. Another way the movie gets our attention is by giving us the feeling of we are one of the detectives. We feel the pain and frustrations the detective has. This feeling do we get from how the film is filmed. Now I'd like to talk about the picture you can see, picture number 1. We are looking from Detective Somerset's eyes, and this gives us the feeling of we are one of the detectives because we are looking at John Doe from Somerset's eyes. And this is one of their instruments the director had used to get us so we get the feeling of we are one of the detectives. Now I would like to talk about picture number 2. Notice there is a cage between us and him. This is a situation with Detective Mills and John Doe. We are looking from Mills' eyes, but you really have to notice the cage between us and him. This means there's his distance, and we really don't understand the theory he's talking about. And consider the next picture. You can see it's another angle they have filmed it. Now the director wants the audience to get the feeling of they understand him, but how does he do that? John Doe is telling us about his work and why he did it. But you really have to notice the scene is shot from another angle where you doesn't see him through the cage. There isn't something between us and him, so we are close to him. You have to notice the light in his face and behind him. This is another instrument the director had used to give us the feeling we understand the theory he's talking about and we understand him. Now I'd like to talk about two other scenes from the movie and how the director, David Fincher, have used cinematic effects to tell us that it's John Doe who have the power in the moment. And here's the next picture. David Fincher framed the feeling of power. We are behind the murder, filming toward him, looking at the people in the police station. It giving us the sense that John Doe is in more control than Detective Mills. And it is John Doe who's having the power, because just some seconds later you can see that Detective Mills are very unstable in the situation, how he's tackling it. In the way how he's tackling it. And now I'd like to talk about the next picture I have. You have to notice the sun is behind him. This means he's having the power, but also that God give him what he have tried to achieve. Like he is God giving him his salary, what he has been waiting for. But it also shows the power of John Doe. The last thing I'm going to talk about is why we don't turn on the television when we see the first murder in the film. It is disgusting and nasty, and we already know where this is going, how this is going to be. I don't think we will look at it if it was a documentary. But I think the reason why we doesn't turn on the television is because of it is a horror film, and the reason why we doesn't turn on the television is just as Stephen King says in his essay, to show that we can, that we are not afraid, that we can ride this roller coaster.